are you? And where are you going? What do you want?
Hello and welcome to Business Lessons from the Military. I'm your host, Kevin Bemmel, and we are here every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time to talk about military history, doctrine, and the practices of military leaders, all by way of distilling lessons that we can then apply to our business and professional lives. So today, I'm very happy to introduce my guest, Jason Hullender. Jason is a veteran of the Marine Corps, but I don't see any military paraphernalia behind you, like so many veterans. After the Marine Corps, Jason went into business, and he is now an M&A advisor, mergers and acquisitions advisor. And I met Jason through a veterans group to which we both belong, and we've talked a few times, and he has some, I think, thoughts that you will find quite interesting about how he conducts his business that are based on his experience in the Marine Corps. So, Jason, welcome. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, Kevin, thanks for having me. Yeah, I guess talking a little bit about the military and my experience with that and how it really helped me become a leader in business and get into business and mergers and acquisitions. It really started when, basically with my father. He was in the Army during Vietnam. Both of my grandfathers were in both World War II, uncles. So it really was the kind of path for me to join the military. And I had a lot of options to look at. So I decided, instead of going into the Army or Navy, I decided to go in the Marine Corps back in '98, and really learned a lot of lessons from that experience. One about my learning how to handle.
If I can just interrupt you for a minute,
yeah, sure.
Because I'm interested in this issue. So, having been a chaplain in the Navy, I spent a number of years with the Marine Corps, and I have my thoughts as to why you might have chosen it. But I'm curious. Not to get into sort of, inter-service rivalries or anything, but I know my father was in the Navy, which was why I ended up, becoming a Navy chaplain as opposed to an Army chaplain. And I took a lot of flack from my endorser, who was a, retired Army colonel chaplain. And he's like, how can you join the Navy? It's like, I'm not going to dishonor my father. I'm joining the Navy. That's, the beginning and the end of it. Right. But so I'm curious as to why you joined the Marine Corps. And the background to the question is, I did a kind of an informal survey, by no means scientific, a few years ago. And what I found was, of the four service branches at the time, because Space Force wasn't around then, the branch of the service that had the most successful entrepreneurs was the Marine Corps. But I doubt that you thought, eventually I'm going to go into business. I'm going to join the Marine Corps.
No, to be honest with you, Kevin, that was my thinking. Is I know most of the entrepreneurs or the better leaders out there were Marines. So that was why I wanted to go in the Marine Corps, because of it taught the discipline, the leadership. I knew it would teach me. And at that time I was young. So I was like, I need a lot of teaching. I need a lot of help becoming, following in my father's footsteps. So I thought the Marine Corps would be the best route. And it had to do with that leadership, role that it taught, that it teaches a lot of people when they get out of the military or the Marine Corps and get into the civilian world.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I was, I think I heard that same study somewhere.
Yeah, I may have told you this before. Who knows? So, and what did you do in the Marine Corps? How did you get in, and what did you do in the Corps?
Well, I was in a grunt unit in 1-2 and got sent to Lejeune. But I was part of supply. I was in the subsistence supply part of my unit. So I was the bean counter that was counting supplies in the back storeroom for our chow hall.
And you were enlisted? You were an officer?
I was enlisted. Yeah, I went in enlisted. Right.
Uh-huh. And how long were you in the Marine Corps?
6 years.
Okay. Oh, okay. So a while.
Yeah, I just did a little extension after my 4 years. Decided to extend a little bit, and then I got out.
And what was your reason for getting out after the 6 years?
I just felt that it was time to. I wasn't planning on being a lifer or going in making a career out of it. It was more to be that learning experience and stepping stone, and then I was going to plan on going into business with my father.
Gotcha. Okay, so go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I was just curious about that part. So go ahead and pick up your narrative if you would.
No, it's just going back to, the men in my family were all in the military. I knew that that's what I wanted to do. So part of the things that it taught me was, one is teamwork. Being in business, being in the military, you gotta be good to work with other people and teams, and you got to learn discipline, to do what you got to do, and accountability. So I thought, well, that all those things would be good lessons for me, and that's why I decided to join, and then decided it was probably time to get out and start really building my family, building my business and things like that.
Gotcha. And so what was kind of your first step post Marine Corps, when you talk about building your family, building your business?
Well, I had met my wife out in North Carolina in Lejeune. So when I got out of the military, moved to Florida, and we stayed in my grandparents' condominium out there in Tampa Beach for a few years. Then my father had gotten the opportunity to move back to Dallas to work with the M&A firm, merger and acquisition company here. He wanted, and I had actually set up a call center in Tampa while I was there. We had a half a dozen people start making calls to business owners. And then, so I did that successfully. The company made an offer for us to come back to Dallas. My father and I both moved back to Texas. And then we spent the next couple years with that company. Mm-hmm. Then in 2008, when the crash happened, we actually had the opportunity to buy the company, the assets of the company. Then 2009, we set up my current business that we're in now. And we've been working with clients across the country, building it with a team of M&A advisors across the country. Mm-hmm. And then recently, my father passed away last year, so he was my partner. But now I'm kind of doing it with our team here on my own.
Uh-huh. And what drew you to being essentially you're an investment banker, right? I mean, someone involved in M&A. So what drew you to that? And what, besides your background in Marine Corps, did you have to develop in order to be, or if there was anything besides, your time in the Marine Corps, did you have to develop in order to be successful in that business?
Well, M&A takes kind of different hats and different experiences to be good at mergers and acquisitions, but really working with people and having a passion to help your fellow man, help people exit their company, get top dollar. It's a life-changing event, so we want to make sure we do the best job we can for our clients. And you learn that in the military. You got your brother six. Got your other team members back. So taking that into the civilian world and into investment banking was part of one of those lessons that you learn.
Mm-hmm. And so you mentioned that you you initially worked with your dad, but you also had another group. So how did you form your group? That you first built, I guess, in Tampa Bay. How did you form that group, and how did your time in the Marine Corps inform how you approached putting that group together?
Well, when we were working for another firm, and so we were helping them. When we ended up acquiring the assets of the company we had during the crash, we just wanted to get good team people around us, good team members that were probably smarter or better than we were, to try to build that team. And in the Marine Corps, it's all about team. It's all about building a strong team that can accomplish the mission.
Right. So what does it mean that they're smarter or better than you, right? How did you assess that? How did you find that?
Well, when you're looking for people who are proficient or good at mergers and acquisitions, a lot of times they've already worked for other M&A firms, or they've got experience working in mergers and acquisitions. They might have been past bankers. A lot of them have worked in finance. So, finding the right people that could work with our clients was important to, accomplish the mission of, being able to become a nationwide M&A advisory firm.
Mm-hmm. So give us an example of kind of a typical client so people can understand, who it is that you're working with, and what that's all about.
Okay. Well, most of our clients are probably, I would call, lower middle market business owners to up to middle market. Most of them are doing at least 1 million in revenue, up to maybe 100 million. Most of them have at least a profitability of 200,000 up to maybe 30 million as far as EBITDA. So we're not working in large billion-dollar transactions. That's a whole different world. Our world is more into the smaller, lower middle market, SMB, small business owners.
Mm-hmm. And what kinds of industries are they involved in?
We work in a lot of different industries, a lot of service-based businesses. We tend to have a lot of our clients are in the service industry. A lot of clients that we work with that are into the IT, doing IT manufacturing. That's a very popular industry right now due to a lot of outside international companies are looking for U.S. manufacturers to avoid tariffs. So that right now is seemed to be pretty attractive. We're getting a lot of interest in HVAC and plumbing. People like pretty predictable businesses that even when the market is down, people still have to fix things, right? They have to get their stuff fixed. So that's kind of sellers we work with.
And are you working primarily with the founders of the companies, or are these private equity owned companies, or typically what is the structure of the companies that you're dealing with, among your clients and also the companies that may be acquiring the companies of your clients?
Well, most of them are founder-owned businesses. Very few of them are PE-owned, but a lot of our buyers are PE firms or family offices that are looking to, acquire these founder-owned businesses, either 100%, or they may want to do a leverage recap or some kind of a partial buyout of those founder-owned businesses. But most of them are going to be, the husband, the founder, or a son or family member of the founder.
Mm-hmm. And you said that sometimes they're being bought out completely. Other times, There's a strategic investment. So what differentiates how you help them, I guess?
Well, it really determines is really by their goals. It's what would they like to do if the owner's ready to retire, or they're ready to completely exit the business and they don't have someone in place that can take over the reins and either buy them out or help them transition. Then finding an outside buyer to buy 100% of the company is usually the solution to that. If they're younger and they're still looking to grow, but maybe the company's capped out that what they can do on their own, but they want to bring in a private equity partner who has experience in growing businesses, or has already owned something in a platform that might be complementary, then private equity buyer is the way solution for that. So it just depends on what the owner's goals are, what they're looking to do with the company, and if they're looking to take advantage of the market right now, because market is still pretty hot for the right kind of businesses.
Okay, so I'm going to take just a moment for a break here and let everyone know that this is Business Lessons from the Military, one of the Way to Wow shows, and my guest is Jason Hullender. He's a Marine Corps veteran who now works in mergers and acquisitions. And our show is sponsored by the Beverly Hills Council of the Navy League of the United States. So I happen to be the president of the Beverly Hills Council. So the Navy League of the United States supports what are known as the sea services, which are the Marine Corps, the United States Navy, United States Coast Guard, and the United States Merchant Marine. And it supports them, or it works with them in three ways. It creates a civilian military partnership, if you will, in three areas: it's support, education, and avocation. And so through this mission, the Navy League of the United States and its local councils looks to support service members and veterans and help people throughout the United States learn more about what the sea services do, how that impacts our lives in the United States as citizens, and how we can support those efforts. So want to thank the Beverly Hills Council for its sponsorship of this show. And if you have an interest in learning more about the Navy League, you can go to navyleague.org. That link will be in the show notes, and you can find lots of information there about publications, conferences, etc., that the Navy League conducts throughout the year. And if you consider joining in our work, so if you are in the greater Los Angeles area, we'd appreciate it if you would designate the Beverly Hills Council as your home council. And if you're in another part of the country, you're in Dallas, right, Jason?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so if you're in Dallas, I'm sure there's a Dallas Council of the Beverly Hills Navy League, and I would encourage you to sign up with the local council there and support them in their work. I know here in the Beverly Hills Council, we have an upcoming event next month is Fleet Week, and we're having a get together down in San Pedro, sort of a kickoff event as we reinvigorate the Beverly Hills Council. So again, thanks to the Beverly Hills Council of the Navy League of the United States for sponsoring our show. So going back to our conversation, Jason, as you look at how being in the Marine Corps impacts your day-to-day just business activities, how do you find those things intersecting? Because I know my time with the Marine Corps, there was always training going on of some, if a unit wasn't just getting back from deployment or gearing up for deployment, there was training going on. I know I did, gas mask training. I got to throw hand grenades, I got taught how to do that. It was one of the highlights of my time with the Marine Corps. It's because chaplains weren't supposed to do that, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right? It was an opportunity to ask for forgiveness if we got caught rather than permission, which we knew they would say no. Um, so, and frankly, there were some other, day-to-day things that, weren't so pleasant, like, having to notify a woman that her husband, had been killed in a training accident, right?
Yeah.
Those are the day-to-day activities of the Marine Corps. And I don't imagine that you've got, a shooting range there in the back of your office, right? Where you're, taking your team to, to learn how to, fire an M16 or something. But so how does the day-to-day life of your work, how is that, informed by your time in the Marine Corps?
Well, just like you were saying, being under, doing some of the things in the Marine Corps, you're under some stressful conditions. You learn to kind of keep your composure under pressure. When you're doing training, there's going to be some things that kind of can stress you out. So you want to use that to learn to keep your composure under pressure. And being, that in the civilian world is something that you just have to you learn to do, and it helps you get through stressful situations.
So give us an example, if you can, of where the training to deal with the stresses of handling a merger and acquisition, where that really came into play, and how you were able to sort of reach back to that training and use it to move forward successfully.
Well, in mergers and acquisitions, it's a long process. So when you're starting through that process, there can be a lot of highs and lows. When the seller, already kind of checking out of the business, and they want to, and the buyer is trying to negotiate, and there's a lot of back and forth in a transaction. That can keeping a cool head during the intermediary, keeping the cool head through that process helps get the deal done. Because if you let the two get together and there's back and forth and there's a lot of emotion involved, it can derail the transaction. So having that experience and keeping composure and making sure everybody in the deal is staying on track, helps get them done.
Yeah. So I was just going to say, it sounds like a lot of what you do is, first of all, help people understand what the mission is, right? What they really want out of this, right?
Yep.
And then keep them on track for achieving that mission, right? Because it's easy to get off plan, especially when emotions are hot, right? And so, as the company commander or the platoon commander, right, you've got to kind of keep people's head in the game to make sure that in the end they're actually achieving their mission, they're achieving their goals, and not
on the goal
somewhere. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly right, Kevin.
Gotcha. So once you've found, well, you've got your client, let's say they're looking to exit the business, they're a founder, they're looking to retire, they have no, child to whom they're going to turn the business over, and you've found the buyer, you've gone through the negotiation, okay, and terms have been reached. So then, what happens at this point? Because I'm a real estate guy. So, for me, I know what happens next. We open up escrow, right? And then there's like a ton of paperwork that everybody signs. And then hopefully eventually, we close escrow and both parties kind of go on their way. But to my understanding, there aren't escrows in mergers and acquisitions. So then how does it look once you've come to terms? How does it look in terms of what you do?
Well, getting to the offer stage is just kind of the beginning of the process, or beginning of the negotiation. Because one, the we call it the letter of intent, starts with just the terms, the price, what's in the deal, and then the buyer has a phase called due diligence. So they're going to want to verify everything that the seller's told them through a due diligence process.
Mm-hmm.
And that can take a matter of months. Sometimes, there's a lot of verification, a lot of financial due diligence. There's a lot of different, so somebody needs to be involved, like the intermediary, to help kind of keep everybody on track and get through that due diligence process, because it can be very stressful for the owner, because they're not used to opening themselves up, their businesses up, to so much scrutiny.
Mm-hmm.
So they find that so keeping them calm and through this, saying, hey, this is just part of the process. We've got to give the buyer enough information so he can, we can get through this part of the process, and then we get into the legal aspect of it, to where, the attorneys sometimes get involved, and they go through their dance around the purchase agreement and the documents that are required to get the deal closed. So it's a process. Just getting to the negotiation step in the beginning is one part, but then getting through the due diligence and then the final closing is a whole different part. And we do sometimes see, like you were saying, escrow. We don't see it a lot in mergers and acquisitions, but sometimes the buyer will put down a deposit, and that will be held as an escrow payment until the final closing.
Gotcha. And so you're in the due diligence period now, and I'll take a simple example. Let's say, the business is reporting, $5 million in annual revenue. It's got EBITDA. That's kind of a term of art. EBITDA means earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. It's kind of like net income for those of you in the real estate world. It's not exactly the same, but a rough equivalent. So you got, $5 million in revenue, $1 million in EBITDA. That's what was reported. And now you get into due diligence, and the potential buyer is looking, and he can't find the $5 million in revenue. He can only find, $4 million in revenue. And he's looking at an EBITDA of, 500,000, not $1 million. So, this is like, the platoon that's supposed to be, hitting this point right on the map, and they get lost, right? So
Houston, we got a problem. Yeah,
right, exactly. So what do you do at that point? You throw your hands up, or, what happens at that point, right? You're Semper Gumby, as we used to say in the Marine Corps.
Yeah. Well, there could be some retrading. The buyer, if they've made an offer based on 5 million with $1 million EBITDA, or whatever that number is, they usually apply a multiple to that, and that's what they're planning on paying. Now, if they find something different, then the seller sometimes has to take less for the business based on probably the same multiple. But then we got to find out where did he misrepresent the amount, or is there some other accounting issue that came up that's we need to figure that out, because hopefully it wasn't a misrepresentation, it was just a accounting error, so the buyer doesn't feel like they were being tricked or anything like that. But yeah, those things do come up, and sometimes the buyer says, well, we're going to have to renegotiate the price, or we're going to have to go back, or just walk away from the deal, and just walk.
Wow. And so I guess, not to put you on the spot, but, how much investigation are you, as advisors, are you able to do, or do you do, before agreeing to take on to a client? Because I can imagine it's potentially embarrassing, right? You're marketing a business that $5 million in revenue, and then in due diligence, it comes out to be, look, if it comes out to be, $4,980,000, okay, no big deal. It's rounding here, right?
A little bit off, yeah.
Okay, nobody's going to have heartburn over that, probably. right? But 20% off, so that's already a substantial number, just to use the example. So how much investigation, et cetera, are you able to do? Do you do when you take on a client, right? I mean, again, this is sort of fundamental Marine Corps tactics. You want to know the lay of the land before you hit the beach as much as you can. On the other hand, you're not going to know everything. That's part of the inherent risk of being an amphibious force.
Well, we're going to do our due diligence up front. We're going to investigate the client's financials. We're going to usually, most likely, do all the adjustments and analysis on the business and the financials, because we're most likely putting together the SIM or putting that information out there. So we typically have verified everything before we rarely get surprises like that. Now there can be surprises that come up that we didn't anticipate, but most of the time we're going to anticipate most of the problems and educate the client and make sure, we're not going to go out to market not verifying, EBITDA numbers and revenue.
Gotcha.
That's for sure.
And what is you said the SIM?
Yep, CIM.
CIM
is the confidential information memorandum. It's similar to an evaluation of a business. Evaluation is more for a kind of an internal decision-making tool, know what the current market value is. The CIM is more of what the buyer receives when we go out there. It doesn't have a price. It's got the numbers, it's got the write-up, it's got everything about the company that's relevant, but it doesn't cap a price. And that's more the marketing document for an investment banker or a M&A advisor like us to use.
Gotcha.
It's like our M16, it's what we go into the market with.
There you go.
Combat.
Okay, or your MRAP.
Yeah.
So switching gears a little bit to the internal workings of your own business, right? You've got a team. Now in the Marine Corps, for example, there's the Marine Corps Leadership Academy, right? So as an enlisted person develops their career, they go to the corporal's course and the sergeant's course and the staff sergeant's course. I know this because they used to invite me to do the, invitation and benediction at their graduations, right? So, and it was an amazing leadership program, right, for developing people. So that was kind of one thing that the Marine Corps offered its people and how it grew its people. And then it also had an incentive system. The incentive system wasn't money, right? It could be, being given a personal decoration, a, Navy Marine Corps Achievement Medal or Commendation Medal or whatever it was, right? So what kind of growth and recognition tools do you have in your business to encourage your team members to, reach for their fullest potential?
Well, it starts with training and developing, the right kind of people to do this kind of work, and then developing them and nurturing them through the process. And we give a lot of recognition. When we have successes, the whole company knows about those successes. We share all the, we have war stories about deals that didn't go right, so we can share those kind of things on our team. We do a monthly team call with everybody involved in the company. And then we work with our, team if they have challenges. So we're there. We're all kind of a team, as you say, working together to accomplish the mission.
Right. So you've kind of got your internal brand of Marine Corps Community Services and Navy Marine Corps Relief, it sounds like.
Internally.
Yeah. So for people who don't know what I'm talking about, so these are, every Marine Corps base has got Marine Corps Community Services, and these are really, it's a whole team of people in a bunch of different areas that are there to support Marines and their family members. It could be anything from counseling to, I'm trying to remember all the different ones we had when I was in Okinawa, but I mean, it's a huge part of the Marine Corps, and they're all right there on the base. And then Navy Marine Corps Relief is just what it sounds like. It's an organ, like if you're if you're a sailor or a Marine and you're stuck somewhere and you need to, get home, right? They will write you a check so you can get home to your, a funeral, God forbid, or something like that. So there's a tremendous amount of support for people in the Marine Corps when there are problems, and the Marine Corps recognizes that these kinds of things are inevitable. So I know for myself, I'll share just a real quick personal story. When I was stationed in Okinawa, my family and I had just come back from California, where my wife had gone because she got island fever being on this tiny island. So she and my daughter went back to California, and finally my senior chaplain said, "You're going to California, you're going to bring your family home," right? So I do. And then 2 months later, my father passed away, and I couldn't afford to, go back to California for his funeral. They're not on what we got paid. And so the colonel of headquarters in service battalion heard about it. And I mean, honestly, I don't know how he heard about it. I think maybe my supervisor called him and said, "Hey, Colonel, we got to help, Chaplain Bemmel out." Next thing I know, he was on the phone to me, for full bird colonel, right?
Wow.
I was a lieutenant at the time, in 03. I'm like, "Yes, sir." And he said, "First of all, I just wanted to express my condolences on your father passing." And I mean, I'm practically in tears on the phone, trying not to cry in front of the colonel, right? And he said, "I just want to let you know that you don't have to worry about it. We're going to take care of you getting home so that you can, be at your father's funeral." And he said, "And that includes your wife and daughter. You all need to go. This is something you need to do. You need to honor your father." And there it was. And this was no small item. This was, probably $10,000 or $15,000.
Wow.
Because it was from Okinawa to California,
Yeah.
right? So, and it shows you the ethos of, taking care of people that is so a part of the Marine Corps, right? I will never forget Colonel Smith. The guy was he was a rock star in my world. So, and he knew he was never going to make general. His tour in Okinawa was going to be his last tour.
Yeah.
He was as dead set in making it his best tour as he was probably in any one that he'd ever had. Right. Again, that's part of the ethos of the Marine Corps. So, I got my respect from the Marine Corps from my dad, I think, but it really is the training ground. So, I'm just curious. Again, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have kind of a sea story from your time in the Marine Corps that really kind of resonates with you on a regular basis as you pursue your professional life?
Well, I always remember kind of during training and going back to 29 Palms. I don't know if you've ever been to 29 Palms, but there's not a lot to do out there. You're in Quonset huts. We're just, doing what we can to entertain ourselves. But, every time I look anything tough in life or anything that comes up that's a challenge, I always kind of look back at the time that I spend in 29 Palms doing training, mountain training and things like that, and think, well, it's not really that bad. It's okay. We'll get through it, and it's all good experiences. But yeah, I mean, just those kind of things. Time spent in the Marine Corps and with my brothers, in arms and people like that. I mean, I still keep in contact with a lot of them from 20 years ago when I was in.
Wow. We always refer to it as 29 stumps, which I'm sure
Yeah.
you know, right?
Yeah.
Because it's in the middle of the Southern California desert, basically.
Exactly.
And it's hot in winter, So,
Mm-hmm.
Do you have other military veterans in your company? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, we have a couple that were military vets. Of course, if we have an opportunity to hire a vet, we're definitely going to hire any veterans and help any veterans we can.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm part of the group that you're part of on a monthly basis. That we we spend time with other business owners and the military that have kind of share experiences.
Yeah. So, and I'm going to kind of wrap things up here in a couple of minutes, but what suggestions, what advice can you give viewers who want to be able to work with veterans in their businesses? They want to be able to bring them in, or maybe they want to work with companies that are owned by veterans, but as civilians, they don't really know the military ethos. Their picture of the military is from World War II movies and that sort of thing. What advice can you give them about how to be successful in, I don't know, recruiting veterans, working with veterans, creating an environment where both the veterans and their business will thrive working together?
Well, there's organizations out there that can help veterans connect with companies that are looking to hire. I would recommend looking into some of those organizations to hire veterans. Veterans are definitely gonna benefit your business in a way that maybe because they've gone through experiences and they've got that that ethos and the accountability that you'd want to look for in any kind of business. So I would say, try to connect with companies that can help connect veterans with companies out there.
Well, very good. Well, Jason, I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing
so
your
much.
thoughts. Yeah. And if for those of you who are watching the show, we've got several live viewers I notice here, or if you're watching the show, after it's posts on YouTube. So, Jason, I'll put your contact information into the show notes. So if someone, if you're a business owner, I always do the shameless plug because my guests, are never comfortable doing that. So if you are a business owner, especially in that $1 to $100 million revenue category, and you're looking for advice on a potential merger, acquisition, recapitalization, etc. So do call Jason, and I'm sure he'll be happy to discuss the matter with you. I can personally vouch for Jason. He is a honest, reputable, extremely knowledgeable individual in this area. So you will not get better service anywhere than you will get from Jason and his team. So Jason's contact information will be in the show notes. If you have any questions, comments on the show itself, feel free to post them in social media. All those links will be in the show notes as well. So, Jason, I'm going to have you hold on just a second. I'm do a little wrap up here, and then we can talk offline for a minute. So,
Thank you.
Tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific time is my show, People Making Money. It's our monthly economic echoes, and we're going to look at all of the various indicators and see what do they mean for the decisions that we need to make for our families, our businesses, ourselves, right? Because there's a lot of turmoil in the economy now. Jason mentioned a lot of things going on with tariffs, and so even on the international stage, a lot of uncertainty. Before I joined the show, I was talking to a friend of mine who's very nervous about making some investments, amidst all of the market, gyrations. So tomorrow, 10 a.m. People Making Money. We'll talk about that and maybe get a little bit of clarity, through some of the fog and craziness. And then on Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific time is my show, Jiggers' Place. And we're going to sit back, we're going to have a cocktail, and we're going to talk about 19th century literature. Now, if your eyes are starting to glaze over because you hated that in high school, it's not going to be like it was in high school. So I'm going to I'm going to attempt to show you how fascinating the stories can be, and also what we can draw from them to better our own lives, which is the point, after all, of reading these books that have been around for, in some cases, a couple of hundred years. So, Jane Austen wouldn't still be read if there wasn't really something great there. And Austen is one of the authors about which I'll be talking. So that's Thursday, 5 p.m. Pacific time at Jiggers's place. If you want the cocktail recipes, just go to my website, bemmel.com, sign up for my email list, and then on Thursday morning, you will get an email and it'll have the cocktail recipe in there. We can mix that up together. And then next week, on Monday at 10 a.m. is my show, Trusts and Estates Weekly. And then a week from today, we'll be back for the next edition of Business Lessons from the Military. So one last time, Jason, thanks so much for coming on the show. It was great fun talking to you. And Lamin, good to see you all the way from no, not Kenya, Namibia, I believe it is. I'm sorry if I got your country of origin incorrect, but thanks for your comment. And signing off as I always do, Marie, darling, you are my bell,